Hi there! In this video we take a look at curve objects. So I cheated a bit and went ahead and added 3 curve objects here. The first one is a Bezier curve, then we have a Nurbs, and then we have a path. You can see that over here as well in the outliner. So to add a curve, we press Shift A in the 3D viewport and we go to curves, and we have these 5 options here. So the first 2 are the Bezier curve that I've added on top here, and then we have a circle option, which is also a Bezier curve. Same for the Nurbs curve. This is the middle one that we've added already, and then we have Nurbs circle, which is kind of the circle variation of like Bezier circle, and this is like the Nurbs circle variation. And then we have a path, which is this straight line at the bottom. So we can manipulate these in object mode, just like any object, by pressing G and grab, R to rotate, and S to scale. Nothing fancy there. So what is the difference between these? So if you tab into edit mode for one of these, you can see that the Bezier curve has the curve is going through the handles of these. So right now we only have 2. So I'm gonna right click here and press subdivide to add one in the middle here, and you can see that the line is going through the control points here. With the Nurbs, however, it looks a bit different. You can see that the curve does not go through the control points. If I select one of them and press G, you can see that it doesn't necessarily go through, but we can do something like this and put them in a straight line, and that will make them not exactly contact here, because this is probably not a perfectly straight edge, but they would connect if the line was straight, like in this example with the path here. So if I tab into edit mode for that, you can see that we only see the control points, but if I start to change this, you can see how it starts to deform, and it looks quite a bit like a Nurbs curve. The difference here is that we have the endpoints connected to the actual curve, so it's quite useful for animating something like a camera or something, where we make sure that the camera that follows the line go from one end to the other, and then we have like the control points in between to adjust. It makes for a very smooth curve. But the most common curve type in Blender is the Bezier curve. So let's focus in on that a bit. I'm gonna select these and hit X to delete. So let's have this Bezier curve here. I'm gonna start with adding another one here, moving that to the side with G and moving this one down, and then tab into edit mode. Now in this case we have 3 now, since I subdivided this, and we're gonna start to look at the settings here in the properties panel. So the most important settings that we have is the shape and geometry, I would argue, so we'll expand on those. And we'll start in the geometry section here. So let me tab out to object mode again, and then increase this extrude, and that will add like this plane on both sides of the curve. And if we increase the offset, we'll move that up and down from the curve's perspective. So if you tab into edit mode again, you can see both the surface that we're working with and the actual curve. And as we manipulate the curve itself, you can see that the geometry follows. Now we can use a taper object, so if we take this one and we use this as the taper object for this one. I'm just going to subdivide that one as well to make a more extreme example here. Something like this. Perhaps select these 2, holding shift and then dragging across both there, create something even more extreme. We can scale an individual point like this, or scale it up or down, move it or rotate it. Alright, And then I go back to geometry, selecting this object here, the first one, take the taper object, and we get something like this. So you can see now that this shape here is taking the shape of this curve here, but the resolution isn't that great, so we get a quite jagged edge here. Instead I want to increase the resolution here to get a more accurate representation of this this profile here. So you can see that as we change this, that this actually changes as well. We can change this type to a 2D curve, so we don't have to deal with the Z-axis. You can see that they are now locked. So I've changed to 3D. Back here, yeah, I can change these up and down, but that doesn't affect the shape of the geometry here. So let's go back to 2D there. There we go. Right, so that's the taper object. I'm remove that for now, and I'm gonna move the extrude and offset. And instead I want to go down to bevel here. We're gonna start with the increasing the depths here so that we get some geometry. So round is just creating a circle or a pipe shape around the actual curve, which will reside in exactly the middle. We can increase that, and we can work with our resolution if we want to. And we can also work with the resolution here, which will work on the change the resolution around the circle, while this resolution here will affect the resolution along the curve. So you can view here, you can see how that changes, and if we take this resolution, you can see how that changes. So if we take this view instead, you can see that there. Right, let's move on to the object. And in this case, let's take our Bezier curve there, and you can see that how that shapes a surface in this manner instead of the up and down and just profile in this direction. And then for the profile over here, this is actually quite interesting, because now we can use a curve object, or rather this graph here, to change how the curve of our object is gonna look, or the shape of it rather. Something like this perhaps. There are also some presets like support loops, or these moldings here, like crown molding, or this one, which can work great for architectural visualization, when you need to make these like floorboards, or the skirting that goes along the on the bottom and the top of the wall. So that's pretty handy, and we can go in and manipulate these as we want and see fit. So these are some of the more basic and more useful options when it comes to creating geometry from a curve object with just curve objects. We can also shape a mesh object along a curve using the curve modifier. So let's delete these, and I'm just gonna add a new curve here, like so. And let's create a circle perhaps. Let's tap into edit mode. Oh, I scale that in object mode, so I'm gonna just apply that scale. Rotate this on the y-axis by 90 degrees, something like this, and extrude in the x direction and create a few loop cuts. Right, so now we can select our mesh object and go into the wrench tab, and here we have a curve, and we will select the Bezier curve, and you can see that it now follows the curve. So the prerequisites for this is that it's easiest if we keep the both the curve and the mesh object's origin point in the same location, and then we kind of align them along the same axis. If there's like a direction to our mesh object, we align it in that direction, and likewise with the curve, and then we select that deform axis right here. So you can see that if I for instance go to Z here, and then I take this mesh object and grab it in the X direction, you can see that's what happened. But if I grab it in the Z direction, it will start to follow the curve, because we have the deform axis set to Z here. So if I move that, and it can cause some quite unexpected behavior. So let's move that back to X, and then move it along the X axis, and you can see how that follows along the curve nicely. Alright, so that is some basics on how you can use curves to deform a mesh object, and hope you found it useful. Thanks for watching. Bye.